So it's the first week of summer and there is so much going on in this garden that we're going to cover. I've got a list here of 7 different things we're going to do very quickly. And then based on the feedback and the comments you write me down below, anything you want me to expand upon, simply write it. Or if there's something that you see maybe in the background that you want me to point out in further detail, or maybe just do an entire lesson on, that's what I'm looking for. I want you to guide us over the next 6 weeks as I'm going to try to put out content on a weekly basis that's driven by your comments. So let me know what you'd like to see more of. And the first thing we're going to discuss, if you want to look over my head, are some ice cream bananas that we're going to be harvesting together, like first and foremost. To my right, we're going to be discussing how to grow vertical tomatoes. Exactly behind me is this passion fruit vine that we created by cutting, and that's another lesson that we did last year. So we got the cuttings, we got vertically growing single, double, and triple stem tomatoes that I'm going to share with you and how we accomplish that. I want to share with you also some fig cuttings, and I have successfully rooted figs during the summer, and I want to share with you what's going on in the back corner of our property with fig cuttings that we gave away for our annual fig cutting giveaway. And I believe we're on year 4 now, which again we launch on February 1st, and we try to do it for the entire month, and we were successful having enough fig cutting donations that we gave away the entire month of February, somewhere between 300 to 400 cuttings. And we're expecting to give away close to 1,000 in 2021. So be on the lookout for that coming February 1st. And I just want to share with you those cuttings that are now, again, here we are going into the first week of summer. And those cuttings that we gave away in February are still not just alive, but thriving in the original storage bag that we have. And I'm going to share that with you as well. I also want to share with you the grafting updates that we did back in March, and there's some maintenance issues that I've completely neglected because I wanted to share it with you that otherwise would have already been done. And I just want to share with you those updates because I know there's a lot of you that are following and waiting to see what's going to happen next. And then we're going to be discussing summer pruning and the value summer pruning brings to your fruit trees. And again, this is a great time as you're harvesting your plants to consider summer pruning, and I'll explain the reasons why. And this is education that was brought to us predominantly here on the Ivory Organics YouTube channel through Tom Spellman of the Dave Wilson Nursery. So be on the lookout for that. And then we're also going to be talking about deadheading roses, and this applies to other things if you're trying to encourage further blooms to enjoy on the property. And last but not least, we're going to be talking about the value of whitewashing your trees. So let's get started. Hi, my name's Charles Malki, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants, and also author of this book called Saving the World with the Home Garden, Improving Our Planet's Health with Natural Gardening Lessons. And I'm proud to share that our first book review that has been done by another YouTuber, Ryan of Growing in the City YouTube channel. I'm going to put that link down below in the description to this video as well as in the comments below. Go and check that out if you want to get a quick preview. And I'm also going to put the link to Amazon, and I'm also going to ask all of you to join me and start like from now joining the podcast and the radio show where we're going to be featured in July. And I truly appreciate your support by joining me at the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show with hosts Joey and Holly Baird. I'm going to be putting their website link down below, and try to get those settings on your computer from now, as they do weekly shows starting now, and we're going to be featured sometime in July, and those details will be published here on the Ivory Organics YouTube channel among our other social media sites, which you can also follow us on, being Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're also going to be on the Dr. Gundry Podcast, and he's a renowned surgeon and best-selling author of the Plant Paradox series, and we're also going to be discussing the concepts and the value that saving the world with the home garden can bring to any home gardener as well as even commercial grower around the world. Well, let's get started now with harvesting the ice cream bananas, which I have here on my right. The plant is approximately, I would say, somewhere between 10 to 12 feet in height, and I'm hoping the camera can capture how the plant has completely leaned over. As you work your way down towards the base, you'll see that there's a new baby sucker, also known as a daughter plant or a pup. And if you take a look even further behind it, there's some taller also daughters or pups as they reach their mature height and will go into bloom later on this summer. you'll see that it's measuring about 8 to 10 feet in height. Within the next couple of months, I would expect it to go into bloom. And just to let you know that once those blooms go into winter, the entire production of the plant stops. We're talking about the new plant growth, as well as obviously further development and maturity of the fruit. So any fruiting that hasn't ripened before the end of summer, and especially between October and November here in Southern California, and as the lower temperatures come, the plant goes into hibernation. The metabolism of the plant slows down so significantly much that ripening and further development of the fruit stops until the warmer weather returns come March and April. And this is now again our 4th or possibly even 5th season growing ice cream bananas here on our property, and we're going to be harvesting this together. I just want to share one other quick helpful tip, being that when it comes to harvesting, the lesson that we learned last year, and I'll put that video link down below so you can watch it in the entirety. And if you want me to demonstrate how to prune and why to prune the parent plant back, I can do it, but just quickly to share, the parent plant's not growing. All of these leaves that you see here are from last year. As of January of this year, there is no new growth. This is all this greenness that you see is all from last year's growth. The new growth, again, if you want to go to my left, you can see that the leaves are not shredded. Take a look at the pup down below. This pup did not exist a few months ago. You can see the leaves are completely intact. Whereas if you take a look at the older leaves, which are all of these that were from before of January, they're all shredded from the wind. The wind basically causes these tears in the leaves, and this is all last year's growth. There's no new growth. Once I harvest these bananas, again, with no new growth, this plant is going to begin dying back. So that's my lesson when it comes to the parent plant, and the goal is to basically prune it down pretty close to the ground, or another tip being is to cut it in half and allow the rest of the resources to work their way as a lot of those get absorbed by the crown of the banana plant. So let's go to harvesting bananas. Unlike prior years where we would typically cut, and again, instead of pruning halfway down the stalk, which would have been right here on my left, if I prune halfway, when the plant folds in half, those fruit are going to be down on the floor. So the goal when pruning typically is to prune about halfway through near the crown of the plant, so that when it folds in half, that the fruit will be hanging near the bottom. But this year, my bananas happen to land right on this trellis system that we're building, and that's offered support. And again, this is something I wanted to harvest about a week ago. As the bananas, let me cut some of these leaves back. So now that we've opened this up, if you come in and can take a look at this, and I'm further ripe, the top of this banana is compared to the middle section and then the bottom. These are the darkest, greenest ones. But typically it ripens from the top down, and once the top begins to yellow, I usually then harvest them and begin enjoying them on a daily basis as they continue to mature. Any excess bananas I will then peel and store them in the freezer and use them predominantly for blending into smoothies, either on its own, or I can add organic cocoa powder to make a banana chocolate smoothie, or blend it with other fruits, and there's just so many endless possibilities on what you can do with your bananas. Let's get started. And there we go. And so here we are with our 2020 ice cream bananas. Can't wait to start enjoying these. So we just got the ice cream bananas off the parent plant, and now the next task is to remove the parent plant. We're also going to clean up some of the suckers. We're going to thin them down to, I prefer actually just selecting it to your best single pup rather than having, as some commercial growers may have, 2 and sometimes even 3. But in my experience in growing bananas here in Los Angeles, where it may not be the most ideal circumstances for growing bananas, I've noticed that just by having a single pup that is then matured to become the bearing parent plant, that by having a single one, that production is a lot faster and more vigorous, and it's just a much more healthier plant than having 2 to 3 competing for the same resources that are there in your soil. So that's my tip to you, is just to allow one parent plant at a time and one sucker to replace its place. And as you can see, for one last time off to my left, you can kind of guess which sucker I'm going to keep, and pretty much all the pups that are surrounding it, and there's quite a few, are probably all going to be coming out. And if you want to see details on that, just let me know by writing in the comments below. And now the next thing I want to share with you are my single, double, and triple stem tomato plants, and let's check these out. So this one over here is called the Super Sweet 100. It's a variety of cherry tomatoes, and the reason it's called the 100 is if you take a look real close here, you can see that pretty much each cluster of tomatoes makes close to 100 flowers, as you can see here, and just behind it you can see all the little fruit. If you come down where it all started, you can see that we're already starting to harvest some vine ripe tomatoes right in there. To accomplish these single, double, and triple stem tomatoes, you can see that whenever a sucker comes out, we've simply minimized the number of vines down to 2. And you can also do 1, and you can do more. But this here is a sucker growth, and we simply remove it like so. And as we go up, we're simply checking the leaf nodes, and here's another sucker growth right there. And we're simply going to prune that back like so. And I just found a third one right there, and we're going to prune it like so. And at the very bottom, we've staked and added, and then we've added some twine to our trellis, which we predominantly built for our year-round evergreen passion fruit vines, which I'll share with you in just a second. But what we're doing is simply wrapping the vine around the twine like so. And anywhere there's any sucker growth, as again, there's another one here in the leaf node, we're simply pinching it out like so. And here's another, hoping the camera can see. So by pruning all of this sucker growth, and the reason, and the predominant reason, aside from the beauty of just having this super tall, easy to grow, most of these tomatoes that we've got here in the garden are all an indeterminate variety, meaning they'll continuously grow through the growing season and continuously offer delicious tomatoes to you and your family throughout, again, the growing season, compared to the determinate varieties, which, as the word says, grows to a determinate height, pretty much blooms at the same time, pretty much fruits at the same time. And an example would be Roma tomatoes. The advantage to the farmer is that they're planting their tomatoes, they're all flowering at the same time, they're all being harvested at the same time, and they're able to clear the field all at the same time. But for the home gardener, I'm always looking for indeterminate varieties, because I want to plant it and I want to get to enjoy that plant over a longer growing season than what the determinate varieties would otherwise offer, unless again it's a flavor or a type of tomato you really want, such as the Roma. And let's continue on over here. This one over here is called the Juliet, and it's a type of Roma shaped tomato, and you can read it over here. It even says aroma grape hybrid tomato, and again, look at that size, as we just discussed, indeterminate. And again, the goal, and you can see like how crowded this tomato plant is, and again, you've actually got some pretty good lighting in here. You can see that sucker growth that's happening right here at the inside of the leaf. And we're just going to, it's small enough that I can just simply pinch it right out of position. And take a look at this one. How would you know which one is the sucker growth? This one over here or this one to my right? So it's going to be this on the right or this one on the left. They both look pretty thick. And the answer is, if you follow it, this one immediately produces flowers. This one still needs to grow and grow and grow. There's no hint of any flowering happening here. And again, the reason for pruning this out is now more resources are going to just a couple of stems instead of to multiple stems, and we are going to have maximum size tomatoes, maximum quality, maximum flavor. And another important thing when it comes to tomatoes is we're also maximizing aeration. A lot of tomato diseases are caused by, and I'm sure a lot of you have done this with those tomato cages, where it's just continuously overgrowing over itself over and over and over again. And then you start noticing the white flies and leaf coloration and all this disease that you just can't control, or it just becomes pretty hard to mitigate. So the benefit of growing your tomatoes on a string, just as we've done over here, is again, it's maximizing light, penetration, maximizing ripeness, maximizing quality, maximizing fruit size, to just unlimited benefits. And even commercial growers take advantage of this concept known as the single, double, or triple stem tomato concept, which we're applying here in the garden for about the second to third year now. And let me share with you this third one. As we come through, every single post here in the garden has our passion fruit vines. And again, you can see that what we've done similarly using this twine is we're wrapping the vine until we get it to catch the very top. All of these passion fruits in the garden all originated from a parent passion fruit vine that we brought from Florida about 8 years ago. And then the last tomato in the series is the early girl. If you want to take a look here, this is another variety I've been growing just because from flower to ripening, it's one of the shortest and fastest of the tomatoes. And our family has truly enjoyed having this early girl tomato variety in the garden. And again, take a look. It looks like there's 2 stems, and I only want one of them to wrap around this twine. And if we basically, again, for identification purposes, we're going to follow the 2. This one here on the right has no flowers other than there's some evidence of some flowering happening right there where my thumb is. But if you follow the left side, you can see that it's immediately flowering and fruiting, as it will at pretty much every single joint on the way up. So what we're going to do is, again, remove the sucker growth out. And there's another one over here that's a little smaller. There's actually 2 more. Another sucker growth right there in the joint. That's coming out. Another one right over here. And that's coming out. And you can see we got flowers and flowers. And it's going to continuously flower so that we can enjoy fruit for the entire season. And the entire season being, here we are now in June through July and August and September and October for sure, and maybe even into November. And I know some of you have been lucky going even past that. But usually between October and November, I'm taking these plants out and also preparing a little bed for fall and winter, which we may discuss later on this year. So this here is the original passion fruit plant, not in this red stuff. That's part of my ground cover that's worked its way into the passion fruit vine. I've got to start thinning that out as well. But take a look at how beautiful the passion fruit flower is. Check out how many flowers we've just had. Look at that little baby fruit right there. And if you work our way up the stem, there's our larger fruit. It's such a fun plant to grow, and it's one of my favorites, in addition to the ice cream banana that we've got growing here in the garden. And just to let you know, we've had this plant here in the garden for 8 years. The average lifespan of a passion fruit vine is only 7. So we're getting close to this plant naturally expiring, and that is the important reason to be preparing more. If you love this plant, you don't plant the seeds you get from the fruit, but you take a cutting. And by taking a cutting of the plant, this parent plant gets to live forever because it's a genetically identical clone. And it's not GMO, it's natural and it's organic. And I know a lot of people confuse GMO with cuttings and cloning, but it's not the same thing. And just to let you know, cuttings is something that civilization has been doing for thousands and thousands of years. It's a concept of when you actually have a successful fruit-bearing plant and you want to have more of it, the way to guarantee that you're going to have exactly the same quality, the same exact flavor, just like a navel orange, is by way of either cutting it or grafting it. And the third and other way we've discussed in the past is by way of air layering. And that's actually one of our best and most successfully, most viewed videos, I believe, with over 1 million views on this lesson we did a few years ago. And if you'd like to see more of that, let me know. Write it down in the comments below so I can start doing it. And a helpful tip real quick when it comes to air layering, this is an excellent time, being summer, to do it, as the plant is very actively growing and will actively create those roots that you're seeking to accomplish before the end of the season and before the end of the year. The worst time I want to share with you for accomplishing air layering, even though a lot of my gardening friends across the world have shared they've successfully air layered, for example, citrus. And I remember one particular gardener doing a Meyer lemon tree during winter. In a matter of a few weeks, there was already roots there. So air layering is something that can be done pretty much year round, but the best seasons are spring, summer, and early fall. So I just wanted to share that with you, and it was something that was not discussed in that earlier published video. And now let me just share, as we work our way to the fig tree, I just want to share, and something I forgot to do, is the size of the tomatoes between those three varieties. So it gives you an idea of what to introduce into your garden. And again, here we are now this first week of summer, and just to let you know, I bought 2 more starter tomato plants that are just a few inches tall. If you want to see me plant that, again, write it in the comments and we'll do it together. And the reason for planting tomatoes now in summer is to further increase the growing season. The stuff you planted in early spring will die earlier in the year than the stuff you're going to be planting in the summer. And you're simply adding more weeks and more months of tomato harvest by installing more tomato plants now if you have not done so already. But let's go and check these tomato fruits as we work our way to the fig tree. Follow me. So starting here again, you got the super sweet 100 indeterminate variety, and just check out these tomatoes. So cool. And they're all around the plant. I noticed as I was walking over, check out this cutting. Literally, we did it just a few months ago and it's already flowering and getting ready to fruit. As we'll work our way over, here's the Juliet. Check out what these tomatoes are going to end up looking like. As we'll work our way through, these here are the early girls. We'll go low so you can see the size of those. And they'll get about twice as big. And check this out. Look at all the different sizes. And again, with the more mature ones being larger and the smaller ones being, they were just recently flowers, now developing into fruits. And another cluster and another cluster. And it just continues on and on and on. Let's secure that in place. Now follow me to the fig. So here we are now with the 10-in-1 fig tree. It's got 10 flavors of fig on one single stem. This is something we've been sharing over the last 3 to 4 years here on the Ivory Organics YouTube channel. And this fig tree has got brown figs and black figs and green figs and tiger figs, and strawberry figs and a raspberry latte figs, 10 varieties of figs. Maybe we can zoom in a little bit as we come through, but there's something else I want to share with you behind. Check out how pretty these raspberry latte figs are. Look at that coloration of like that raspberry color on top of those green figs. And what I want to share with you is this over here. And these were the last of the fig cuttings from our February fig cutting giveaway. And you can see I haven't done much other than put these cuttings in a trash bag. Here's the second trash bag that we're opening up to help retain moisture. There's a few damp paper towels down there. But check out what's going on here. And check this out. Look at these roots. Look at this growth. And again, these are from back in February. They were a lot more alive a couple weeks ago. As the temperatures are going up, you can see that they're continuously drying. But there's a couple more friends that are wanting free fig cuttings. I'm going to be packaging this up today and sending it off to a couple of those that won back in February but didn't get the notice until recently. So that one you just saw is probably coming your way, in addition to a couple good ones I saw at the bottom. But I just wanted to share with you how simple it is to store your fig cutting from whatever cuttings you're able to gather during the winter. You can simply store them until you plant them in spring. And just to let you know, when it comes to storing your fig cuttings, it's a good idea to actually not even put a moist paper towel on them, but simply wrap them in a dry paper towel and store them in your crisper in your refrigerator, dry, as there's enough moisture in the wood of the plant to sustain the plant until you actually put it in whatever growing medium to get your fig cutting started. But did you know you can also start fig cuttings in the summer? And you can do so not by propagating the wood off of the new growth. You can easily identify the new growth by seeing all of the new wood, which started right where my finger is. I don't know if you can capture this, but this here is last year's wood. So this is before January of 2020. And so this is all the 2019 wood. And this is the 2020 wood, all of this. So it grew and leafed and fruited, and grew and leafed and fruited, and grew and leafed and fruited, and grew and leafed and fruited. Every single leaf node has a fruit on the way up, and for a healthy fig plant, it'll predominantly have this particular pattern. If you're gonna root your fig cuttings, I don't recommend cutting this year's growth, but go back to last year's growth and use the more hardened wood to accomplish your cuttings. And I have successfully accomplished rootings that way. Or if you're going to air layer, then my advice would be to use the green wood or even last year's wood, but do not go back past 2 years. And again, this is in my experience, and if you want the fastest rooting success, is to use younger wood. And again, you may have more success using last year's wood than this year's wood, but don't go past typically 2 years, as that wood just becomes a lot harder to work with, and typically rooting is a lot slower than you otherwise would experience with the newer woods. And now let's go on to the next lesson I want to share with you. Follow me. So here we are now with the Dapple Supreme Pluot. It's a Zager genetics fruit tree available only through the Dave Wilson Nursery, and a lot of nurseries now across the country make available these Zager variety fruit trees, which are simply crosses between related fruit trees. I mentioned that this is a Pluot, and a Pluot is simply a plum and an apricot cross, similar to people, where a husband and a wife together mate, and their offspring are crosses between the mom and the dad. The Pluot is a plum and an apricot, and they have similar origins. They come from a similar parent plant, and they ended up being selected and bred for their different characteristics, and then brought back together by Zager genetics, which is simply the process of selective pollination between excellent varieties of fruit trees. So the best of the plums and the best of the apricots and the best of those crosses were then recrossed with one another. Simple hand pollination, grabbing the pollen from one tree and introducing it into the ovary of another tree. And so the main point I want to share with you is that this Zager genetics fruit tree is not a GMO fruit tree in the sense of taking genetics from an insect, for example, as some GMO products out there are, where they're taking the genetics of an insect and putting it into a plant, or one bug into an animal, or anything like that. Nothing like that. It's simply taking the pollen of one plant and adding it to the ovary of another plant where there's compatibility and that they naturally pollinate one another to create a seed. And then what Zager genetics does that is just mind-blowing is that they'll plant 50,000 seeds on average per year. And from those 50,000 seeds, they'll only select about 1, 2, or 3, maybe 4 of those fruit trees over the course of 10 years. So they'll grow them for 10 years, taste their fruits, see if they're consistently bearing, seeing what amazing characteristics they have to offer. And from those, and after 10 years of care, only 2 or 3 are selected, and this process is repeated annually. And that's how Zager genetics has accomplished close to 400 or more patented varieties of fruit trees that are better tasting, better in quality, better in size, better in consistency, better in so many different ways, and an excellent reason to include a Dave Wilson, specifically a Zager genetics fruit tree, to your home garden, as we've done and a lot of my gardening friends have done as well. And so what we have here is a Dapple Supreme, and what it is, I just want to read here, it says it's a new low-chill Pluot. Dapple Supreme derives its name from 2 of the best of, again, it's Zager genetics fruit trees, the Dapple Dandy and the Flavor Supreme. So we took those 2 trees and crossed them to create this. Check out these beautiful fruit. I'm going to harvest one today, and then we're going to discuss one of these concepts. So if you can take a look, we just take off some of that film that's on the fruit. Take a look at how, and one of the characteristics are those dimples that are on the fruit. And let me wipe that a little bit more. And let's take a look at the inside here. Check this out. How fun is that? Eating your own fruit, as I always like to say, directly from the sun. The sun is feeding the tree, and the leaves are not just making sugar, but they're making all the vitamins and the nutrition and the health that goes into the fruit. And you're eating it the very same minute, not waiting the days and the weeks that it takes to make it to your grocery store. This is awesome. Hit cut, it's your best fruit you've ever had in your whole life. So here we are. This is what's left of the fruit, the seed. And if I plant the seed, I'm not going to end up with another Dapple Supreme, but I'm going to end up with the child of Dapple Supreme. It's kind of like our children is not a genetically identical clone of the parents. It's not my wife and it's not me. Our kids are a blend, a combination of that. And whatever it was in the garden that pollinated this Pluot, specifically the Dapple Supreme, and it could have been the Santa Rosa plum, it could have been the apricots, it could have been the peaches, it could have been a variety, it could have been my neighbor's fruit trees. So the seed could have been pollinated by anything that's within the Prunus family, as I like calling it, but it's not the family. Scientifically, it's called the genus. So anything in the Prunus genus can pollinate this particular seed as long as the plants are flowering around the same time. And that pollen gets transmitted by way of wind or the bees or any of the other pollinators that may bring the pollen from one tree over to this tree and result in fertilization that results in fruit that we all get to enjoy. What I want to share with you next is the concept of pruning. And this is something, again, if you want to see this, just let me know in the comments and we'll do it. But there's a concept that we learned very thoroughly last year in a couple of interviews that we did again with Tom Spellman of the Dave Wilson Nursery. And we also originally brought this concept to you by Cameron Akrami of the Busy Gardener. And it's a concept known as, I'm going to put it here on the screen so you guys can all understand it and memorize it. And it's very, very important. It's something called backyard orchard culture. The general concept of backyard orchard culture is growing fruit trees that are in general, and there's a lot of concepts behind the backyard orchard culture definition, but one of them is making sure that the fruits are easily accessible. And what I want to share with you is that if I do summer pruning now, and let's say we prune it at whatever my height is, 8 feet is my reach. So my height is 6, I can reach 8 feet. If I prune as high as I can reach, all of the flowering nodes, which are, if you want to come in a little closer, I want to share with you the flowering node. I can point at right here where the leaf meets the branch. You'll see that there's a node, and right in the node there's a bud, and those buds are the flowering nodes that will flower next year spring. So by pruning to my height, which is my reach, 8 feet, I can guarantee you that next year when the plant goes to fruit, all of the fruit are going to be within reach. As you can see, this is all the new growth that happened this year. We're talking about close to 5 to 6 feet of new growth, and all of the fruit, notice, are on last year's wood. This tree was only about 6 feet tall, and now it's closer to 10 to 12 feet tall. But if you notice, all of the fruit are in last year's grow zone. Now that the tree's grown more, all we have to do is simply prune it to our reach, and we can guarantee that the fruits are going to be in this zone. All the new growth that happens next year spring, even if it's out of reach, will not support the fruit. As specifically when it comes to the trees in the Prunus family, those plants will fruit on last year's wood. So this is the 2020 growth, and as long as we keep that in check to our reach, whatever growth that happens next year in 2021, even if it grows out of reach, will not support fruit on that new growth. The fruit will be on what will next year be last year's growth, but we're going to have fruit that's going to be more up and higher into the canopy of the tree, and we're looking forward to doing that. The other thought, and I just want to share this with you because I'm looking forward to your feedback, is what do you think about the idea of growing your fruit trees tall? As we visited Edgar Valdivia's garden in Simi Valley, he likes his trees tall to kind of mimic the fruit trees that you would see in a tropical forest. And I like calling my backyard a tropical food forest. As you can see, if you come around here, you can see, I mean, there's trees and different trees pretty much in every single planting spot. Even down below here, I've even got some dragon fruit, and I'm experimenting with different colors of red, purple, and yellow, among others. And we've got like just so much happening, and balancing things between containers and in-ground and so forth. So this is my tropical food forest, but what Edgar Valdivia has done in another successful YouTube video, and I'll put that link down below for you to check it out, that he grew all of his trees to be super tall, and he enjoys the fruit that he can harvest, even though the majority of the fruit is out of reach. But he loves walking into the shade of his canopy and just enjoying the fact that he's in a true forest, but it's just full of food. It's quite amazing and spectacular. Another quick reminder before we work our way over to the apple tree and begin thinning apples. Don't forget to feed your plants. For those of you that didn't feed your plants in May, which is an excellent time for putting organic fertilizers in your soil, and the reason May is better than June is because you want those organic fertilizers to start breaking down, and I'm talking specifically about the granular varieties. The Ivory Organics fertilizers can also be turned into a liquid by simply adding, the product. It says about a tablespoon per gallon or up to 5 gallons of water, and just allowing it to sit for about an hour before then using it as a liquid fertilizer or liquid feed. You can also filter the solution and then use it also as a foliar feed if you enjoy foliar feeding your plants, to make sure all of that nutrition is absorbed by the leaves that function as a sponge. And it's another way to get a lot of nutrients and micronutrients into the plants, rather than just allowing all the uptake to happen by the roots. And it's an important application, especially on your evergreen plants, to foliar feed during the winter months when the roots are cold and really not functioning that well on absorbing nutrients, as well as now the leaves can otherwise do. And that's an important lesson for foliar feeding your plants in the winter months. So again, we've got plants that are approaching now maximum capacity, maximum metabolism going into summer, which is now happening this week. And light hours are now approaching 14 hours of daylight compared to winter. By December 21st, we're going to be dealing with only 10 hours of daylight. So there's going to be a 4-hour swing starting first day of summer, and for the next 6 months, we're going to be losing up to 4 hours of daylight. So we're going to go from 14 hours down to 10 hours of daylight in just the next 6 months. So it's important that while the plant is at maximum metabolism, maximum fruiting, maximum flowering, is to make sure that you feed your plants. And what we're going to be using today is this Ivory Organics 6 Macros Plus. You'll notice that the product is, and I want to share this, and this is the first time I'm sharing this with you, the labels have now been updated to simply read all-purpose organic fertilizers. The 6 Macros Plus, for those of you that are looking at it, it's right there in the teeny tiny small print at the very bottom of the back label. And what's so cool about the Ivory Organics blend is it's focused on giving your plants all of the macronutrients plants need. Take a look at the label. You can see it's got a very high NPK percentage for an organic fertilizer. If you take a look at the back, and this is what we pride ourselves on, it doesn't just have nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, but it also has all the macronutrients, being 6 macronutrients, including calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. It also has iron, but it has a lot more than iron. Take a look at all of these ingredients. What I want to highlight over here is the glacial rock dust, but many of the micronutrients that are not listed. Some of you may be familiar with azomite. Glacial rock dust is just another way. It's a crushed rock offering your plants a lot of the micronutrients to make sure your plants are getting pretty much all of the nutrition and health that it otherwise would need in an all organic way. So Ivory Organics, I call it still 6 Macros Plus. You can take a look at the older label. And again, you might also be receiving this as the company's now in the process of transitioning from the 6 Macros Plus label to the all-purpose formula, but they're both an all-purpose product. So just want to make you guys aware of that. The Super Blend has a higher NPK, and the Premium Blend has a lower NPK, being just a lower percentage of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. You can buy the higher one, which is the one we recommend. It also has a lot more ingredients compared to the Premium Blend, and you can just use less of it. But again, the product we're most proud of with Ivory Organics is the Ivory Organics Super Blend formula. And then, as you can take a look at, I just want to share with you, back in September, you can see that we also whitewashed the tree. So if you take a look, this was done about now 9 months ago. So you can see the whitewash formula is still on here. The reason we whitewashed, so when we first planted the tree together, Isabel and I whitewashed the tree. And the reason for whitewashing your plants is to protect it, as you can read here. The Ivory Organics Armory listed for organic use offers protection against damaging sunburn, insects, and rodents, and it's for uses on your roses and fruit and nut trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs. And this product has the added benefits of all of these oils, which include castor, cinnamon, and clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint, and those oils offers the insect and rodent repellent protection. And if you don't need the oils, and if the goal is simply to offer your plant protection from sunburn, or in winter when the leaves fall off this deciduous tree, it'll offer protection from winter sun scald as well. And this here is an oil-free formula, and you would simply whitewash. And if you take a look one last time, you can see that the plant has expanded quite a bit. Look at all of those cracks. Those cracks are not unprotected surfaces, it actually has expanded and grown. So we're going to come back and revisit and whitewash those unprotected areas that would otherwise be getting too much sun until we build this canopy out a little further, so that we guarantee that we're protecting what I like calling the heart of the plant, being the tree trunk and the lower branches. So as long as that heart is protected, this tree will be in the garden for many, many more years than if we're dealing with a sunburnt tree. And we've done many examples. One of my favorites and most dramatic has been an orange tree that we visited in North Hollywood, where it suffered 3rd-degree sunburns in just a matter of months. The landscaper came through and pruned a branch that was growing towards their swimming pool, and as soon as they opened that canopy and allowed all of that sunlight into what would otherwise be shade, the plant immediately began to crack and resulted in significant damage to 50% of the bark. And just underlying that bark is the cambium tissues, which had the xylem and phloem, those vessels that move the sugars and waters and nutrients up and down the plant, and all of that was damaged. So the plant is only living and thriving off that shady side of the plant, the north and the northeast side of the plant, where the sun doesn't reach. And so that was an example in North Hollywood of a 3rd-degree sunburn, being not only did the skin or the bark of the tree get damaged, but it went all the way past the bark and damaged the underlying cambium tissues, which completely got fried, resulting in what I like calling a 3rd-degree sunburn. So sometimes, just to let you know, sunburn doesn't necessarily show itself, but a protected plant can now otherwise put its resources towards growing, as we can see here, and flowering and fruiting, rather than repairing all of that skin damage or bark damage resulting from overexposure to the sun, especially in the summer months where we're dealing with high temperatures and 14 hours of daylight or more, depending on how far north you are or how far south you are. Well, let's continue. Next thing I want to share with you is thinning your apple tree, and that's something we're going to do real fast together. If you take a look here, we've got all of these clusters of Granny Smith apples. Over here is our 3-in-1 apple tree. We've got Granny Smith, we've got Gala over there, which is more of a reddish variety, and then here in the middle is a reddish green variety. If you take a look, you can actually see a little bit of that reddish pigmentation already beginning, but when that's ripe, it'll be half red, half green, and it's a tart and sweet apple. These here are our famous Granny Smith apples, and what we're going to do, simply, you can see we've got a cluster of about 5. Let me see if I can count this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 apples right here in my hand. And the goal is to thin it down to about maybe 4 or 3. So the goal is to look for if there's any imperfection. This one over here seems to have an oddball size. So we're simply going to prune that out. And here's another one in the back that's really not developing. So we'll take that out as well. And we can thin this out one more time. Let's go with this one. So I'm going to leave this guy that's standing alone, even though it's a little smaller, but I'm going to thin out this cluster of 4 down to 3. So I'm carefully going with my scissors here, and I'm just going to get that stem right there. And that'll allow these apples to grow to their maximum size, rather than competing upon one another and not reaching its maximum growth potential. And I'm going to continue doing that throughout the rest of this tree. Another important reason for thinning, you can see that the branch, it's starting to lighten up, but it's kind of breaking under its own weight. So it's important to thin your apple tree to give these branches a chance at supporting its own fruit. And again, what thinning will do will allow the apples to reach their maximum growth potential, maximum flavor, maximum sweetness. It just makes the plant a lot easier to support what it's got, compared to if it's weighted under too much fruit. A lot of growers, and this is something I learned from Zager Genetics, a tree that carries too much fruit is not a good thing. Isn't that kind of mind-blowing? Wouldn't you want a tree that has like millions of fruit? But the risk with that is if your tree, and again, imagine this for the farmer, if it's supporting that much fruit, it'll break the branches. As you can kind of see here, like the tree's already somewhat stressed under the weight of just these 20 fruit. But imagine if it had 3 times more fruit. That's not a good situation, as it requires more maintenance. Imagine all those farmers that have to go and visit the tree and keep on thinning it and maintaining it and staking it and so forth. So too much fruit is not a good thing. The goal is visit your plant, look to see if it's stressing out, and offer it some support when needed. And again, if you want to take a look here, I see like another cluster of 4 apples here, another 4 or 5 over there. And we're just going to continue thinning those out carefully without damaging its neighbors. So cute. I know it looks heartbreaking, but you're going to reap the benefits later, trust me. And just below these apples in the canopy of the blueberries, as you can see, it's getting some filtered sun and some shade, and these blueberries are loving it. We've got these 2 blueberry bushes, one off to my right, and then this one here in front of me that we planted together about a few years ago, and they're in their own container. Its roots are not competing with the roots of the trees, and they're doing remarkably well. Just check out all of these blueberries that we've got grown in the garden, and the children are loving this. Well, there's 2 more things I got to share with you. Follow me. So here behind me is a variety of roses known as purple splash. And if you come in a little closer, you can see that it's basically a purple rose with a splash of white on the petals. And let me see if I can find some more roses. They're kind of nearing their end. As you can see, these blooms have already been spent. And these blooms, check this out, are now going to seed. Right here you can see those rose hips, and you can see there was another cluster of roses there. So I don't have like the best examples of what these roses look like, but there's more coming. As you can see, this entire area is going to be blooms, and we've even taken cuttings off of this, and you can see just over the wall here that these just recently finished blooming. I wish I was able to share some more of these blooms, but as you can imagine, they're purple blossoms with a splash of white in there. They're so beautiful, and one of the favorite roses that I saw when visiting the Huntington Garden just near Pasadena, California. And later on that same year, I was invited by the South Coast Rose Society, where I had an opportunity to teach. And one of the roses they gave away, and I won, was this purple splash. And I just want to share with you that it's thriving and doing well here in the garden. But something for all of you rose growers out there that need to consider, especially come summer, is deadheading. And it sounds horrible, kind of like beheading, but the goal is you want to take off the rose heads so you can enjoy more roses for the duration of summer and going into fall. Take a look over here. We're going to demonstrate deadheading, simply going back behind this cluster of roses. And I know for some of you that enjoy growing seeds, you're going to want to wait, but if you wait for these to mature, and these are like the fruits of the rose, you're not going to get to enjoy much more flowers this grow season. But if you prune, we're simply going to go behind this cluster of spent roses to the nearest leaf node, and we're simply going to cut about 1/4 of an inch above, and I'm hoping you can capture that bud. That bud is going to result in more growth and more flowers by pruning it right there. Now all the energy that would otherwise go into creating more seeds and the next generation of roses will now go towards creating new growth and ultimately more flowers that we'll get to enjoy. So let me just do a couple more of these before we get on to the last demonstration. This here is done, so it's coming out. These will keep because they're still blooming, but while I'm here, I can actually take out this one spent flower and just clean it up a little bit like so. That was way too easy, wasn't it? We just did it all together. So you can take a look here on the floor. All of the rose resources that were going to the future generation of roses has now been taken away. Now all of the nutrients, and when we go to fertilize it again this week, all of that nutrition and specifically that phosphorus that's in the fertilizer, which supports the flowers and fruit, will now go towards the benefit of having another bountiful boost of roses to now enjoy going into summer and into early fall. The last lesson I want to share with you, and as you can see, there's about 100 more that we could possibly do together right now, but the last thing I want to share with you is this 3-in-1 grafted, and now it's actually a 4-in-1 grafted prunus family fruit tree. Specifically, we got peaches and plums and apricots all growing on a single root, on a single root stock. If you take a look down here below, you can see that we got the single tree trunk right there, supporting 1, 2, 3 stems. And what we're gonna do is prune all of this sucker growth. This was originally a plum tree rootstock, so all of this sucker growth near the bottom is all plum and plum and plum. So we're cutting off all of that sucker growth. You can see over here is some damage caused by girdling, and I know we've demonstrated examples of that, and we're using the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard for protection from keeping beetles and termites from entering. Take a look at all of that exposed wood. There's no bark, there's no skin in this area of the tree due to girdling that was caused about a year ago. So we're now repairing it, and this is another example. You can see the wood in the middle is cracked, and this is gonna compromise the integrity of this wood if it doesn't heal over quickly. So we're gonna also seal that again to keep beetles and termites from entering until eventually this callousness that you can see, it's growing quite rapidly, will eventually heal over. I'm expecting by the end of this grow season, it's gonna be completely healed over. And what we've grafted over here is, you can see by the leaves, that we've got here apricots, indicative by those round kind of heart-shaped leaves. Behind it, peaches, and we can even harvest. I've saved one back here. If we come in a little closer, let's pick this peach together. I'm hoping you can capture it right there. See that peach? This here is the Babcock peach. So we've got peaches, royal apricot, and then over here is the burgundy plum. We grafted on together back in March, so 3 months ago, and this is a long time for leaving a graft on, but 3 months ago we grafted this variety of peach known as the Red Baron peach. And the reason we grafted the Red Baron peach is not so much for the flavor as much as the dramatic coloration of this variety of peach that's unlike pretty much any of the others. It's got red, giant peach blossoms, whereas most peach blossoms are really small pink flowers. This one has got large, kind of like double showy red flowers. And I can also demonstrate some images from other properties. And even before we grafted it, it went into bloom. And we've even got one of the first fruits. So the other cool thing, and it's in line with the backyard orchard culture, is that we see that this peach is a lot smaller and probably still about a month or two away from getting large and ripe as is Babcock peaches. So the cool thing is that we're going to get to enjoy peaches now over a couple of months instead of just harvesting peaches. And this again is another concept of backyard orchard culture, is to make sure not only are your fruit within reach, but another one is to make sure that you're enjoying a large diversity of fruits over a larger grow season. So instead of just eating peaches for an entire week and then having no other fruits on your property for the rest of the year, the goal is to enjoy Babcock peaches for a couple of weeks, enjoying your Red Baron peaches for the next couple of weeks, enjoying apricots, which are typically early season. We didn't get any fruits off of this year as it's a new graft. All of these grafts were only done about 1.5 years ago now. But what I want to share with you next is what we've accomplished with the approach graft as well as with the cleft graft of the Red Baron peach onto the burgundy plum, which is this over here. And you can see how large the burgundy plum is. So what we're going to do here today is I just want to share with you specifically this graft that we did together. So if you come in a little closer, this here is the Red Baron peach. As you can see, it's on its own root in its own container, and what we've done is we've grafted it through a process known as the approach graft right here. So it's Red Baron peach on top of the burgundy plum, which is right there. And you can see the fishing twine that's left. And I'm not going to go through all the steps on what we did to accomplish this. We did also wrap it in a damp paper towel and also a plastic bag, but I should have removed this like 2 months ago. You can see that the fishing twine is constricting terribly so on the bark, and sharing with the cambium layer, which is just behind the bark, which contains the vessels, the xylem and the phloem vessels that are transporting those waters and sugars and minerals up and down the plant. And by having that string that tight on the plant, and also be aware of also a lot of your stake trees on your property where again, if those ties are so tight against the bark of the tree, it's otherwise constricting the flow of the cambium fluids behind the bark. So we need to get that off, otherwise we can expect this successfully grafted peach to otherwise die if we keep that string there. So what I'm going to simply do, and we're going to do this together, is we're going to remove the fishing twine off of this, what is known as the approach graft technique. So here we are, and we're going to carefully get this twine off, like so. So this took a few extra minutes than I would otherwise like, but we got all of that fishing twine out from the grafted union, and now we're going to do together the separation of this approach graft. So this here is the Red Baron peach, which goes down into the Red Baron peach container. We're simply going to now prune the bottom part right there and separate the Red Baron peach, like so, from the plant, so that I can sit right there. Shared with you. And what we're going to do now is, using the Ivory Organics, you can actually use one or the other. As we discussed earlier, the yellow label has the 3-in-1 added insect and rodent repellent protection, as it's got the 7 natural oils that can be shown right there. Or you can use the whitewash formula. Both of them also have in their inactive ingredients, you can see that they have diatomaceous earth right there, and that actually helps as an insect repellent as well. And you can see here on the yellow label as well, diatomaceous earth, and the value that that adds also in being an insect repellent. So it's kind of on both labels, but we're going to go with the yellow label, being it has the added oils. We've added less water. The directions on the back, and let me share with you this one because it's cleaner. You can see on the directions on the back, it can be used as a brush-on direction by simply filling up the can with water. It could be used as a foliar spray, making up to 5 gallons. So this pint-sized can make 5 gallons of the ready-to-use spray bottles. And then as a tree paste, you're simply going to add a lot less water, a 1/4 cup of water, and you're going to end up with something more like this. So look at how thick that is, and that's going to be our tree paste that we're going to use for sealing all of these gaps that we've created from grafting. And we're just going to seal that like so, and we're going to brush it along the stem as well, and all of those pruned surfaces. And now we're using the product again as a tree paste by simply adding less water. And this is one of the first times we've demonstrated the application as a thick application. And these grafts are now loving it because they're finally free of the constraints of that fishing twine that was truly girdling the flow of nutrients throughout these plant tissues. So I hope you've enjoyed this very fast, in my opinion, garden tour. And if you have any comments, be sure to write them down below, as I'm going to be checking your comments and your feedback and your suggestions for our next gardening lessons. And I'm going to try my best on a weekly basis for the next 6 consecutive weeks. So be sure to share with me any suggestions you have on things you've seen today, things you've seen in the past, and feel free to write me any other questions, even if it's not related. Hopefully it's a gardening related question, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. And again, from the date of this post and for the next 7 days, I'll be frequenting the comments below this video and answering as many of your questions as possible to help make this your best growing season ever. If you've enjoyed this lesson brought to you by Ivory Organics, be sure to give us that thumbs up, and most importantly, share this lesson with your gardening friends and family. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that push bell notification to get informed of these educational lessons as soon as they're made available. As always, keep growing with Ivory Organics, and wishing you all happy gardening.